Welcome back to Blue Collar Coder. I'm Jack Carrington, and today we're going to look at a bunch of different things. We're going to look at NextJS, Heroku, and ReactQuery. And we're going to do those by creating an app that kind of doesn't make much sense. It'll tell me the number of days it's been since I built one of these. It's a squirrel feeding pandemic picnic bench. But by doing that, we are going to learn some cool stuff. We're going to learn how to deploy to Heroku. We're going to learn how to add APIs to our Next.js app. We're going to learn how to query those APIs using ReactQuery. And finally, we're going to learn about the importance of environment variables in this context. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I promise we'll go into the shop and I'll teach you how to make one of these for yourself. In the meantime, let's go jump into the code. All right, so this is Next.js, and this is what we're going to be using for this application. So let's use npx create next app to create our Squirrel Picnic app. And the way you fire up Next in development mode is you say yarn dev. Nice little landing page there, looking good. So let's change out the title. And then let's remove most of this content. This is just boilerplate anyway. Now we're down to a main tag. Let's get rid of that footer. Don't need that. Interesting thing here. So Next is going to manage some styling for you. So here you have a style tag with this JSX attribute on it. And that's the styling for this page. So we're just going to remove all of that. And now you've got the global style down below it. So just change out the font family. So I'm going to add in a little content here. It has been 0 days since the last time you made a squirrel picnic bench. That's great, but it's a bit small. So let's go and work the JSX there. So anything inside main, we're going to make it Arial. Give it a nice big font size. Beautiful. Now let's add a little padding between those divs. Kind of stretch it out a little bit. Okay, let's add a new class to the 0 so that we can then style that. Let's make it look like a sign. Give it a little radius border around it. Nice big font. Looking good. Okay. So now how do we put this on Heroku? I'm going to use this walkthrough here. First thing to do is make sure I've got Heroku set up. Looks like I do. To do that, I did brew install Heroku, and then I logged in using the Heroku credentials that I have, using Heroku login on the command line. So the next thing to do is to change out our start command so that it can take a port number. I need to initialize the Git repo and add node modules and .next to that. All right, now we need to create the Heroku app in this directory. So we're going to call that Squirrel Picnic. Finally, I need to add my files, commit them, and then I just push to Heroku. It's a branch that is what we're going to deploy out to Heroku. And look at that. Wow. Okay. Now we're doing our install. And we get a URL back, squirrelpicnic.herokuapp.com. So let's click on that. And we're on Heroku. And that's it. That is great. Okay, so we've got our app. It's deploying to Heroku. The next thing to do is to go add some APIs and learn how to do that in Next.js. So let's go jump back into the code. Okay, so next thing to do is to go and add an API route. So we're going to go over and take a look at the Next.js documentation for API routes. All you got to do is create a new folder called API, and then within that, the name of the route that you want to serve your API off of. So in this case, we're just going to use days. So it's going to be /API/days. And then you export a default function. That's going to take a request, a response. You're going to say the response is a 200. And it's an application JSON response. And then we're just going to stringify days at 5. If we run that, and we go to that in our browser and take a look on /API/days, ta-da! We get a JSON response. How cool is that? So the next thing we want to do is go and bring in both Axios and ReactQuery. So ReactQuery is a ReactHook that is particularly suited towards making queries off the client. Interesting thing though, it doesn't have its own fetch or Axios equivalent. So you actually kind of layer it on top of the fetching that you already have. The first thing we need to do is kind of build that out. So we are going to make a new function called getDays, which uses axios.get to get /API/days and returns the data. We're going to add the useQueryHook to our component. And we're going to give it a name. This is the user query. And we're also going to give it that function that returns a promise that gets the days. Let's drop that in there. And now let's look over in the inspector, and you can actually see it making the request. Of course, we don't actually hook it onto anything. Now the hook gives us back a bunch of stuff. It gives us the data, but it also gives us back error if we want that. And also we'll tell if we're still fetching. There's a whole bunch of state that you can get from it. I'm just going to use data as a way of conveying whether it's completed or not. So I'm just going to say, if we have data, then drop it in there. And I just need to say data.days. And boom, now we got our 5. 5 was coming back from the service, and now 5 is in the UI. Okay, so let's push this up to Heroku again, because we want to see if Heroku is going to handle this API. All right, so we add all our changes, we commit those, we push that up to Heroku, and bring it up in our browser, and there you go. Awesome. So you got a Next app, it's got an API, which is super easy to write, and it works right out of the box with Heroku. How cool is that? All right, we've got our API going. We've got our Heroku going. This is really good. The next thing to do is to go and add some business logic to our API. Now the last thing to do is to actually give it a day as a reference, right? Because it's going to be a number of days between then and now. So let's start off by getting now, using new date, and then we're going to use last_day as an environment variable that tells the app what the last time that I built a picnic bench was. So we're going to bring that in using process.env. And if we don't find it, we're just going to use the current date. So we're going to get the difference by doing a math.floor of the difference, but it's in milliseconds. So we got to convert that back into actual days. There you go. And now it starts off and it says it's got 0 days. And that's because last day hasn't been set. So let's set last day locally to 4/21. And now, cool. It's all right. I'm recording this on 4/27 and that gives us 6 days. There you go. Let's try it out. If we push it in the future, yeah, -4, that's great. So let's deploy that code out to Heroku. Again, all you got to do is just add, commit, and push. And you could do all that as part of a CI process. Absolutely. And we'll see that it says now 0. And that's because, again, last day is not set in the environment space over there. And now if I go and I say Heroku config, it shows me that I don't have any config values set. So let me go and config set, and then give it a last day, then bring it up again. Cool. So it's actually restarted the server with the new environment variable. And then now we're getting 4 because I set that to 4 days ago. Now, why are environment variables really important? Well, they're important because that's where you normally get your API keys. You don't want to check your API keys into a code base. That's really insecure. Normally what we do in like a Docker context or any kind of remote context is we manage those API keys or some reference to those API keys with environment variables. So that is why environment variables are kind of critical here. And it shows you how easy it is to use those in a Heroku setting. All right, well, I hope you've learned a lot of good stuff about how to deploy to Heroku, how to use environment variables, how cool ReactQuery is. Now the next thing to do is to go and jump into the shop where I can show you how to go make one of these. Okay, to start out, I'm going to cut 2 12-inch sections of this 1-inch thick, 5.5-inch wide deck planking. And one of those is going to be the top, and then the other I'm going to split in 2, and that's going to be the benches. Now, from some 3.5-inch stock that's also about 1 inch thick, I'm going to cut one length that's 12 inches long, and that's going to be the supports for the bench, and then 2 lengths that are 6 inches long each, and from those I'm going to cut out the legs. All right, now I'm going to rip down the center of this, and that's going to give us our 2 benches. They're about 2 inches wide. And then I'm going to cut out these 1-inch wide segments for the bench supports. That's 1 inch wide, 1 inch thick by about 12 inches long. And then finally, I'm going to cut the legs. And these are about 1.25 inches or so wide. It's not really, you don't need to be perfect on this sort of stuff. Now, when this is all done, I'm going to have the tabletop and then the bench sides themselves, then the supports, about 12-inch long, and then finally the 4 legs, which we need to cut some angles on. So I'm going to set the miter gauge to 45 degrees and cut those. Now I'm doing everything on a table saw here, but you could actually do this with just a handsaw or with a chop saw if you got one of those. And then on the drill press, I'm going to use a countersink to create a space where the head for the screw is going to go. And that countersink is the kind of triangle part at the top. Now, you could use a hand drill for this, no problem. And those countersinks are available at any hardware store. They just make it really convenient to kind of hide where the screw heads are. Okay, we've got our drilling all done. Next thing to do is assemble this all up. So I've marked out about 1 inch in the center point from each side. So I'm going to use a hand drill and some deck screws. They're about 1.5 inches long to connect the legs to the table. Looking good so far. Sorry about being a bit fuzzy on this. My cameraman had the day off. So next thing I'm going to do is screw through the legs and attach the supports. And I'm using that little red block to actually offset them by about 1/2 inch in. And then once that's done, the last thing to do is attach the benches by screwing up through the supports into the bench from underneath so you don't have anything sticking out. So from here you can see where the screws have gone through the legs and into the supports. And then from the bottom, you can see going through the supports and into the benches. So there's, I guess, 6 screws per side, 2 for the legs, 2 for the supports, and then 2 for the bench. So 12 screws in total. So in making this video, I actually made a bunch of these now. I've got 3 of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raffle them away. And to enter the raffle, all you've got to do is just retweet the original tweet that I did promoting this video. It's in the description right down below. And on May 8th, I will pick 3 winners, and then I'll contact you directly. You can give me your home address or wherever you want me to mail it to, and I'll mail this to you. So there you go. All right, hope it makes your day. Anyway, in the meantime, if you like this video, just hit that like button. If you are a fan of these videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime a new one of these comes out. And of course, be happy, be healthy, be safe, and make yourself some pandemic picnic benches if that's what floats your boat. All right, bye guys.